gonna get what we want. Hey, it's about that time.
We know what we want to do. It's another opportunity for us to get better.
Alabama has won the match.
How you compete, that means how hard you play, how tough you play, how you can sustain in tough circumstances.
Welcome to TideTV This Week, brought to you by Renaissance Bank. I'm Christopher England alongside Maggie Hetzel.
You know, you thought the Tide was going to go to Texas A&M, a hostile environment, a top 25 matchup, and you thought they were going to have a little trouble. Absolutely none.
None at all, none at all. Maybe just a little bit at the beginning, but it wasn't long after that. It was a top 25 showdown in Texas between number 21 Texas A&M and the number 1 ranked Crimson Tide on Saturday.
At home, Texas A&M took advantage of getting the ball first. The Aggies marched down the field 15 plays, taking up over 8 minutes on the drive as Kellen Mond punched it in from the 1-yard line out to give the Aggies a 7-0 lead. But on the Tide's next possession, they evened the score. A 10-play drive was finished with a 31-yard pass from Tua Tagovailoa to Jalen Waddle for the touchdown. That touchdown made it 7-all.
On Alabama's next possession, Tua threw another touchdown pass, this time to the SEC leader in touchdown receptions, Devontae Smith. The 47-yard score put the Crimson Tide up 14-7. On this one, Tua looked left, took off, and found Najee Harris running along with him. Harris dove into the end zone for the score, putting the Crimson Tide up 24-10. The Aggies added a 32-yard field goal as time expired in the second quarter to make it a 24-13 Alabama lead at the half.
After a 27-yard field goal from Joseph Bulovas, which you just saw, Tua connected to Henry Ruggs from 33 yards out for the score. It was his only catch of the day, but you know what? He made it count. That extended Alabama's lead to 21 points at 34-13. The Aggies then answered with Kellen Mond to Jay Windenmeyer, 25-yard touchdown to cut the Crimson Tide's lead to 14.
Early in the fourth quarter, Brian Robinson punched it in from 2 yards out. The extra point was blocked, making it a 40-20 Crimson Tide lead. Then the Alabama special teams came up with a block of their own, and for the second time this season, it was Ale Cahoe. Cahoe blocked the Texas A&M punt, and Tyrell Shavers recovered it in the end zone for the touchdown. Alabama was up big 47-20. Texas A&M added a late touchdown, but it wouldn't matter as the Tide rolled over the Aggies in College Station 47-28.
Obviously a great win for us. This is a tough place to play against a good team. Certainly proud of the way our guys competed in the game. And you know, you say you got to always play the next play. We certainly shot ourselves in the foot 3 times in a row in the red zone where we threw an interception and kicked 2 field goals in a critical time in the game where we really could have sort of broke the game open early on. You know, defensively we played decent at times, but at times we gave them plays that we shouldn't have. Let the quarterback scramble around a little bit too much in the game and didn't really finish the game with class in terms of, you know, being able to take the air out of it. Too many penalties. I mean, 11 penalties on the day. I think special teams was huge in this game. We had over 300 yards in returns. And, you know, the way I do math on that, whether you score touchdowns or not, every 100 yards you have in field position is, you know, worth 6 points. So that was huge in terms of the field position. It was huge in our, you know, ability to turn the field around and probably score points. But I felt like we did a lot of good things in the game today, and we obviously have things that we need to work on.
Quarterback Tua Tagovailoa led the Crimson Tide with 293 yards passing and 4 touchdowns. His 4 scores put him at 81 for his career, passing A.J. McCarron for the career touchdown record. Najee Harris had a career-high 20 rushes for a season-high 114 yards on the ground. Devontae Smith led all Crimson Tide receivers with 7 catches for 99 yards and a touchdown.
On defense, linebackers Anthony Jennings and Shane Lead had a team-high 8 tackles each. Jennings added a sack, a pair of tackles for loss, and 1 pass breakup. Defensive back Shaim Carter anchored the Tide secondary with 7 tackles, 2 pass breakups, and a forced fumble. Alabama finished the game with a season-high 5 sacks, 2 more than it had all season in a single game.
And on special teams, Jalen Waddle and Henry Ruggs combined for 259 return yards. Waddle's 128 punt return yards ranks 3rd all-time in Crimson Tide history.
Back at the crib. We back at the crib.
And for that performance, Waddle was named the Southeastern Conference Special Teams Player of the Week. As we mentioned, Waddle totaled 128 yards on 4 punt returns, giving the Crimson Tide great field position against the Aggies. Waddle averaged 32 yards per punt return with a long of 43 yards.
After that performance in his own state, Waddle leads the nation in punt return average with 22.3 yards per punt return. The SEC Special Teams Player of the Week honor was his first career.
Alabama's 47-28 win over number 21 Texas A&M was Coach Saban's 83rd career win versus the Associated Press top 25, pushing him past Florida State legend Bobby Bowden for second all-time. Former Penn State head coach Joe Paterno leads the list with 86, 3 ahead of Coach Saban.
And while the Crimson Tide took care of business against number 21 Texas A&M, there was a huge upset in the SEC that shook the top 5 of this week's rankings.
Alabama remains number 1 in the Associated Press poll, but there is a new number 2. After beating number 7 Florida, the LSU Tigers jump from 5 to number 2, right behind the Tide. Clemson falls to 3. Ohio State moves down a spot to 4th, while Oklahoma moves up 1 spot to 5. Florida falls 2 spots to 9, and with the upset loss to South Carolina, Georgia drops 7 spots all the way down to number 10. Auburn is 11, and Missouri enters the rankings at number 22.
Now, over in the Coaches Poll's top 25, Alabama picked up 2 more first-place votes this week as the Tide still sits atop the rankings. Clemson is 2nd, while LSU jumps to 3 spots to number 3. Ohio State is 4. Oklahoma is 5. Florida is 9th. Georgia is at 10th, and Auburn is at number 11.
And, you know, Meg, we have a game time for next week's homecoming matchup against Arkansas. And believe it or not, it's another night game. It will be the 2nd home night game in a row and only the 2nd night game of the season for the Crimson Tide.
I know everyone's excited about that. The Tide and Razorbacks will kick off at 6 p.m. inside Bryant-Denny Stadium, and the game will be televised on ESPN.
Stay with us, because coming up next, we'll give you an all-access look inside the Tide's top 25 win over the Texas A&M Aggies.
Tide TV this week is brought to you by ATI. Built by Bama. Rebuilt by ATI Physical Therapy. Ford and the F-150. Tough runs in our family. See your local Ford dealer today. AFS, a Bayless company. Your foundation and waterproofing specialists. Serving you since 2000.
There was one big upset in the top 5 this week, but no worries, wasn't the Tide. They handled their business in College Station, and in the process, Tua set the Alabama career touchdown record, moving ahead of A.J. McCarron's record of 77. Bama's offense has already broken the glass ceiling at this point, and somehow they're still coming for more. Let's take an all-access look at Alabama's win over Texas A&M. It's brought to you by ATI.
Kyle Field, College Station, Texas. The Alabama Crimson Tide and the Texas A&M Aggies. Alabama has never lost in this stadium in history.
It's about stopping Kellen Mond, and it's going to take a great quarterback performance to beat this team and to keep up with Tua scoring. So it's all about stopping Mond today.
Everything we do today has got to be explosive. We set the tempo. Let's go. That's right, baby. That's right, baby.
We'll have over 105,000 here today. Quick throw out. Jalen Waddle weaving his way for his first touchdown of the year. My goodness.
Tua to Jalen Waddle, a beauty. And Alabama goes 31 yards on a 3rd down play.
Let's go, man.
Mond covered up. He's going down.
Boyd B, the freshman, made the stop. Here comes a blitz. Quick throw. Caught by Smith. Devontae Smith will score. Cruising for a touchdown, Alabama. Getting pushed by Terrell Lewis and getting dumped by Terrell Lewis.
Here comes pressure, and down he goes.
Back-to-back sacks. This one's Christian Barmore. Jalen Waddle reverses his field. Waddle at the 40. He'll go down to the 19. Jalen Waddle came to play today as a receiver and a return man. That's good for 42 yards.
Touchdown! Oh my my goodness, what a play! What a play as he finds Najee Harris.
We got a ball. Hey, we got the field on third down, bro. Turn on. Let's dominate, bro.
It came loose, and Alabama recovers the football.
Kick is up, and it's perfect. Four-man rush. Mon tripped up. I think it was Terrell Lewis that got him by the ankle.
And another defensive stop for the Tide.
Gonna go long sideline. Got it. Touchdown, Ruggs. Henry Ruggs.
He'll make the grab. He's in. Touchdown, Alabama.
At the 25 is Waddle. Little stutter step. Jalen Waddle at midfield.
Over 120 yards now for punt returns in the day. I mean, that's really flipping the field position.
Robinson spinning, and he's in. Touchdown, Alabama.
Brian Robinson ran over Buddy Johnson for the touchdown. Under pressure on a 1st and 10 from the 25, and that'll be the 5th sack of the day.
Been sacked 5 times. He's been knocked around, hurried.
This one is blocked. It is loose. Picked up and walked in by Alabama.
KO had the block punt. That's the 2nd time he's blocked a punt this year.
Terrell Shavers there to pick up the block. Great job by the Crimson Tide special teams.
No, sir. We at the crib, baby. We at the crib. You better show you got that right.
And this one is in the books. Alabama 47, Texas A&M 28.
Going on the road, how was your team tested, especially in terms of composure today?
Well, this is a tough place to play. You know, it's a great win for us. It's got to give our players a lot of credit. We didn't finish the game, you know, really like you'd like to. You know, we'll learn from it and get better.
Team on 3. 1, 2, 3. Team.
Tide TV This Week is brought to you by ATI. Built by Bama. Rebuilt by ATI Physical Therapy. The University of Alabama, where legends are made.
It's one of the greatest rivalries in college football, the 3rd Saturday in October. Alabama and Tennessee will meet for the 102nd time on Saturday. While there's a lot of history between the two schools, the Crimson Tide has dominated as of late. Alabama leads the all-time series 56-37, with the Crimson Tide winning the last 12 in a row. The Vols are led by former Alabama player and assistant coach Jeremy Pruitt. A native of Rainsville, Alabama, Pruitt played at Alabama under Coach Gene Stallings and was an assistant for 7 seasons at Alabama under Coach Saban. After winning the national championship over Georgia in 2017, Coach Pruitt left the defensive coordinator position to become the head coach of the Vols. In his only meeting as head coach against the Crimson Tide last season, Alabama won 58-21 in Knoxville. Including Coach Pruitt, 7 members of the Tennessee coaching staff have either played at Alabama or served on the Crimson Tide staff. Tennessee comes into this year's matchup 2-4. The Vols dropped their first 2 games of the year, a 39-30 loss to Georgia State in their season opener and a 29-26 double overtime loss to BYU in Week 2. Tennessee bounced back in Week 3 with a much-needed win as the Vols defeated Chattanooga 45-0. With the start of SEC play, Tennessee dropped their next 2 matchups, a 34-3 loss at Florida and a 43-14 loss to Georgia. However, Coach Pruitt and the Vols got their first SEC win of the season last weekend against Mississippi State, a 20-10 victory at home. On the season, the Volunteers are next to last in the SEC, ahead of only Vanderbilt in scoring offense, averaging just 23 points per game. While junior quarterback Jarrett Garantano started the season for the Vols, true freshman Brian Maurer has started the past 2 games for Tennessee at quarterback. In last week's win over Mississippi State, Maurer suffered a concussion late in the 2nd quarter. His status for this week is up in the air, as Coach Pruitt said it would be a game-time decision. Defensively, Tennessee ranks 10th in the SEC, allowing 25.7 points per game. Their pass defense has been the bright spot this season, as the Vols rank 2nd in the SEC, allowing just 199 yards per game and 2nd interceptions with 9 on the year. The Vols defense stepped up in a big way last week in the win over Mississippi State. Tennessee totaled 7 sacks, 10 tackles for loss, and 3 interceptions as they held the SEC's leading rusher, who averaged 119 yards per game, to just 13 rushing yards. Coach Saban will be looking to continue a couple of pretty impressive streaks on Saturday. He is undefeated against Tennessee as the Crimson Tide's head coach, winning all 12 matchups against the Vols, and he's still undefeated against his former assistants, winning all 18 matchups. Kickoff is scheduled for 8 p.m. inside Bryant-Denny Stadium. The game will be televised on ESPN. We'll have more Tide TV this week coming up next. Welcome back to Tide TV This Week, brought to you by Renaissance Bank.
Going into last Thursday matchup with number 17 Texas A&M, the Alabama soccer team had won 2 matches in a row, and both in overtime.
Could the Tide continue that success on the road in College Station? In the first half, the Alabama defense stood strong. Texas A&M fired out 6 shots with 3 corner kick attempts, but were ultimately unable to score. Alabama took the 1-0 lead in the 66th minute during a tight battle off a corner kick inside the box. The ball rolled into the net after bouncing off a Texas A&M player, earning an own goal. However, the Aggies tied it up in the 82nd minute with a goal by Jimena Lopez off a free kick from 30 yards out. After playing 2 overtime periods, the match ended in a 1-1 tie for the Tide's 3rd straight overtime match.
And on Sunday, Alabama returned home to take on the LSU Tigers in their annual Power of Pink match. The Tide closed out the first half with a strong 2 goals in the final 5 minutes. Taylor Morgan scored her first goal of the season with an assist from Serena Pham in the 41st minute. 3 minutes later, Kat Rogers extended the lead with help from Chloe Mays and Bren Martin, notching her 2nd goal of the season. And then in the 87th minute, Macy Clem's 3rd goal of the season made it a 3-0 match as the Tide earned its first conference shutout of the season with the 3-0 victory over LSU.
Stay with us. We'll have our top plays and our players of the week coming up next on Tide TV This Week.
Here comes a blitz. Quick throw. Caught by Smith. Devontae Smith will score. Tagovailoa going to go long sideline. Got it. Touchdown, Ruggs.
She'll drop it out. Ball sent in right in front of the goal on the ground and finds the back of the net for Alabama.
Those are our BBVA top plays of the week. Now let's take a look at our players of the week, brought to you by Payless Drugs. And this week we go with a couple of SEC players of the week. Jalen Waddle totaled 128 yards on just 4 punt returns against Texas A&M. Waddle averaged 32 yards per punt return with a long of 43. Waddle leads the nation in punt return average with 22.3 yards per punt return. And for that performance, Waddle was named the Southeastern Conference Special Teams Player of the Week.
And freshman aide goalkeeper A.J. Crooks collected 6 saves against the 17th-ranked Texas A&M Aggies. She held the Aggies to only 1 goal after facing 15 shots. Crooks also led the Tide to its 4th shutout of the season against LSU with 3-0 victory as she recorded 2 huge saves with the score tied at 0. Crooks was named the SEC Freshman of the Week.
Now let's take a look at next week's schedule for the Crimson Tide. What's next is brought to you by Renaissance Bank.
Soccer travels to Columbia on Wednesday to take on Missouri, while volleyball will be in Gainesville on Thursday to take on the Florida Gators.
Women's golf will be in Wilmington, North Carolina, beginning on Friday to take part in the Landfill Tradition. And football hosts the Arkansas Razorbacks for homecoming on Saturday night at 6.
And there's a lot happening on Sunday. Volleyball will be on the road to take on South Carolina at noon. Soccer will be at home as they host Auburn at 1. And we have a men's and women's basketball doubleheader. The men will take on Georgia Tech at noon in a charity exhibition, while the women host Auburn Montgomery in their exhibition matchup following the men.
Thanks again for joining us for another episode of Tide TV This Week.
Have a great week, everybody. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
This has been a presentation of Learfield IMG College.